Welcome to Whispers in the Dark. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and check out the amazing products in the description. Now enjoy the story.
I've never been one to share personal things much, but after what happened, I feel like I need to record this somewhere. Maybe so someone will believe me, or just to organize my thoughts before I completely lose my sanity. It all started 3 weeks ago when I took a temporary job in a small town in central Texas. I'm a freelance wildlife photographer, and an editor from a nature magazine hired me to document the changes in the local ecosystem after a season of severe droughts. It seemed like a simple job: spend 2 weeks photographing the landscape and wildlife of the region, especially the migratory birds that were supposedly developing new migration patterns due to climate change. I rented a pickup truck in a small cabin about 20 minutes from town, right on the edge of a vast conservation area. The location was isolated, exactly how I liked it for working without distractions. For the first 3 days, everything went normally. I woke up before dawn, drove to different observation points, and spent hours taking pictures. The people in town were reserved, but polite enough when I stopped at the only local diner for breakfast or when I went to the market to buy supplies. It was on the 4th night that I noticed something strange. I was editing the day's photos on my laptop when I heard a loud noise on the cabin roof, as if something large had landed there. My first thought was that maybe it was a broken branch from one of the nearby trees, but the sound was followed by a series of heavy steps that seemed to move slowly above me. The roof creaked under the weight, and I clearly remember thinking that it was too heavy to be a common animal in the region. I went outside with my flashlight to check, but I didn't see anything beyond the oppressive darkness that surrounded the cabin. The stars were hidden by low clouds, and the wind was blowing stronger than usual. I convinced myself it was just my overactive imagination, a result of working alone for so long. I went back inside, locked the door, and continued working, although I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me through the windows. The next morning, while walking around the cabin, I noticed something disturbing. There were marks on the roof, like deep scratches that seemed to have been made by huge claws. And scattered on the ground around the cabin, I found gigantic feathers, larger than any bird I had ever photographed before. They were black with a strange bluish sheen when exposed to the sun, and the largest of them was almost the length of my forearm. I kept a few of them in my backpack, thinking I could identify them later. That day, I decided to explore a more remote area of the preserve, where there was a small canyon that supposedly housed a large colony of birds. I parked my pickup truck at the trailhead and hiked for about 2 hours before reaching the spot. The canyon was impressive, with steep walls and several natural caves. I set up my equipment and started photographing the area. That's when I heard it for the first time. A high-pitched, piercing shriek, so loud that it seemed to vibrate through my body. It wasn't like anything I had ever heard before, not a coyote or any other known animal in the region. It was something primal, almost prehistoric. I pointed my lens to the sky, hoping to capture whatever had made that sound. That's when I saw it for the first time. Circling at a considerable height, there was an enormous winged creature. At first, I thought it was an exceptionally large eagle, but when it descended a little lower, I could see that it was much bigger than any known bird. I took dozens of photos, barely able to believe what I was seeing. The wingspan of that thing must have been at least 15 feet, maybe more. And as it circled lower, I could distinguish disturbing details: a massive body covered in dark feathers, wings with a structure that seemed almost wrong somehow, and a disproportionate head with a huge beak as sharp as a spear. When it noticed my presence, the creature let out that horrifying shriek again and began to descend towards me. I panicked. I dropped some of my equipment and ran back to the trail, without looking back. I could feel the air displacement from the giant wings beating closer and closer. I threw myself under a rocky overhang at the last second, and the creature swept past just above me, its claws scraping the rock where I had been just a moment before. I stayed hidden there for almost an hour, trembling uncontrollably. When I finally ventured out, the thing was gone. I gathered my scattered equipment and ran back to the pickup truck. All the way back, I had the feeling that I was being watched from the sky. That night, after locking myself in the cabin, I examined the photos I had taken. Most were blurred by motion, but some captured the creature clearly enough. I sat staring at them in shock, trying to find some rational explanation. Could it be an unknown species? Some kind of mutant condor? Nothing made sense. I decided to show the photos to someone local. The next morning, I went to the diner and, after a few attempts to start a conversation, I casually mentioned that I had photographed an extremely large bird. The silence that fell over the place was immediate and disturbing. The old attendant looked at me for a long moment before asking in a low voice where exactly I was staying. When I mentioned the cabin, he exchanged meaningful glances with some of the other customers. An older man in the corner approached and asked if I had seen the big bird. The way he said it, as if it were something known but never openly discussed, sent chills down my spine. I showed him some of the photos on my camera, and he visibly paled. He told me that for decades there have been reports of a monstrous avian creature in the region. Locals simply called it Big Bird, a name that sounded strangely childish for something so terrifying. According to him, the creature was responsible for the disappearance of several people over the years, mainly children and small people who were alone in isolated areas. The authorities always attributed these cases to accidents, wild animal attacks, or even kidnappings, but the older residents knew the truth. The man advised me to leave town immediately, but I was determined to get more photos, better evidence. This could be my career-making discovery, something that would revolutionize the knowledge about birds. How foolish I was. That night, the creature returned. This time, it didn't just walk on the roof, but started attacking the cabin. I heard its claws scratching at the exterior walls, trying to find an entrance. The windows rattled with each lunge, and at one point, one of them shattered when the huge beak repeatedly struck the glass. I hid in the bathroom, the only part of the cabin without windows, holding a hunting machete that I had brought to clear trails, although I knew it would be useless against something that size. The attacks continued for almost half an hour before stopping abruptly. When I finally mustered the courage to come out, the cabin was partially destroyed. There were holes in the roof, broken windows, and deep claw marks on the walls. I decided that was enough. I gathered my belongings and got into the pickup truck, determined to leave that place immediately, even if it was in the middle of the night. The road leading back to town was deserted and poorly lit, winding for miles through open fields and small patches of forest. I was driving well above the speed limit when I heard that horrifying shriek again, now much closer. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the giant silhouette against the night sky, its wings outstretched, blocking out the stars as it swooped down towards me. I floored the accelerator, but the pickup truck was old and too slow. The creature caught up with the vehicle and began attacking the roof of the cab, its claws tearing through the metal as if it were paper. In a panic, I lost control of the steering. The pickup truck skidded and swerved off the road, rolling several times before stopping in a field. I was trapped in the overturned vehicle, still conscious, but disoriented and injured. Through the broken windshield, I saw the creature land a few yards away. In the dim moonlight, I could see it completely for the first time. It was larger than I had imagined, its massive body supported by two thick legs ending in talons that looked capable of crushing bones effortlessly. Its wings, when folded beside its body, reached almost to the ground. But the worst part was its face. There was something terribly intelligent in those eyes, an ancient and malevolent awareness that seemed to assess my every move. The creature slowly approached, as if savoring my fear. I tried to unbuckle my seatbelt, look for an exit, but I was stuck. When it got close enough, the creature tilted its head and watched me through the broken windshield. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew there was no escape. Then, without warning, it attacked. Its huge beak pierced through what remained of the windshield, aiming directly at me. I managed to throw myself to the side at the last second, and the beak slammed into the seat where my head had been a moment before. The creature recoiled and attacked again, this time grabbing my arm with its sharp beak. The pain was indescribable. I felt the beak pierce my flesh and clamp onto the bone. The creature began to pull, trying to drag me out of the vehicle. I screamed and fought, grabbing onto whatever I could with my other arm. At some point, I managed to reach the machete that had fallen onto the roof of the cab, now the floor of the overturned vehicle, and, in a desperate move, I slashed at the creature's eye. The shriek that followed was deafening. The creature recoiled, flapping its wings furiously and knocking away what remained of the windshield. I seized the opportunity to cut the seatbelt and crawl out through the wreckage. My arm was bleeding profusely, but adrenaline prevented me from feeling the pain completely. I ran zigzag across the field, knowing that in the open space I would be an easy target. About 100 yards away there was a small abandoned building, maybe a barn or shed. It was my only chance. I ran like I had never run before, hearing the flapping of wings behind me getting closer rapidly. When I was just a few yards from the building, I felt something hit me from behind with tremendous force. I fell to the ground, the air expelled from my lungs. I rolled to the side in time to see the creature landing next to me, its talons digging into the soil. One of its eyes was closed and bleeding where I had hit it with the machete, but the other fixed on me with a fury that seemed almost human in its intensity. I managed to get up and run the last few yards to the building, throwing myself through the partially broken door and slamming it shut behind me. It was an old tool shed, full of rusty equipment and moldy hay bales. I heard the creature slam against the door, which rattled but didn't give way immediately. I frantically searched for something to defend myself with or to reinforce the entrance. I found an old shotgun hanging on the wall, but it was rusty and without ammunition. The creature continued to attack the door, which began to crack under the impact. In desperation, I grabbed an old gas can I found in a corner and the machete I was still holding. When the door finally gave way and the creature forced its way in, I poured the contents of the gas can in its direction and, using a lighter I had in my pocket, I ignited the liquid. The flames spread instantly, engulfing the creature, which let out a cry of pain and rage that still echoes in my nightmares. Its feathers caught fire quickly, and it thrashed furiously, spreading the flames to the rest of the shed. The fire spread through the dry hay, and in seconds the whole place was ablaze. The creature, now a living torch, flapped its wings in a frenzy, simultaneously trying to extinguish the flames and attack me. I used the confusion to escape, running past it and back out into the open field. I glanced back once to see the shed completely engulfed in flames, with the silhouette of the creature still visible through the windows, struggling weaker and weaker. I walked along the road for hours until a trucker stopped and took me to the hospital in the next town. I told a story about a car accident and a wild animal attack. No one questioned it much, although the doctors seemed intrigued by the strange puncture marks on my arm. I never went back to get my things from the cabin. I left Texas the day I was discharged from the hospital, and I have no plans to return. The photos I managed to take were on the memory card I was carrying in my pocket, but when I tried to access them later, I discovered that they were all corrupted, probably damaged during the accident or by the heat of the fire. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I hear that horrifying shriek and the sound of huge wings beating against my window. I don't know if the creature died in that fire. Part of me doubts it. Something that has survived for so long, that has inspired decades of horror stories, wouldn't be destroyed so easily. As I write this, my arm aches where the beak pierced me. Doctors say the nerve damage is permanent, that I will never fully recover the movement. A constant reminder that what I saw was real, not a hallucination or a nightmare. If you are ever driving on those deserted roads of Central Texas and you hear a piercing shriek coming from the sky, don't stop. Don't look up. Just accelerate and pray that its wings aren't fast enough to catch you. Because when the big bird chooses its prey, it rarely fails. I was one of the lucky few. Don't count on the same luck.
We've reached the end of our story. What did you think? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to follow the channel, like the video, and check out the amazing products in the description. And don't miss the next video, you're going to love it.